Hey everybody, and welcome to another Star Citizen video. My name is Carry Spikes, and in today's video we're taking a look at an oldie but a goodie, the Starfarer Gemini. The original Starfarer was released in Alpha 2.3, and this is the militarized version built up by Aegis Dynamics in collaboration with MISC, so that's the one we'll be looking at today. Before we get started though, a huge thanks to RustyHook84 Gaming for helping to support me at the VIP Gold level. I very much appreciate it, and if you'd like to do the same, you can do so by clicking the blue join button down below and consider becoming a member of the channel, or using the Patreon link in the description and consider becoming a patron with lots of goodies and perks available to all of our members. Of course, you can help me out in a big way by remembering to like this video if you found it helpful, sharing it with your friends and communities, and becoming a subscriber with notifications turned on so you don't miss anything in the future. Feel free to join me on stream Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. We have a great community there and often have a great time playing with friends and community members, so come on by and say hello. And of course, our wonderful Discord community, and the links for both of those can also be found down in the description. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this video. The Gemini is the militarized version of the MISC Starfarer, and it brings together the industrial insight of MISC with the military might of Aegis Dynamics, the company that retrofitted this ship much like they did with the Kraken Privateer by Drake Interplanetary. This can be easily observed by having a look at the very front of the ship, where the fuel scoop of the Starfarer has been replaced by Aegis with this menacing, massive missile rack consisting of 9 size 3 missiles and some optics up front, which I believe are largely for eye candy, at least for now. Just below that menacing missile rack, we see that we have a docking collar, and unfortunately this doesn't really serve a purpose in the current iteration of the game. However, it can make for a hasty exit out of the ship when you're on the ground. Unfortunately though, beyond this doesn't really serve any other purpose at the moment, but it will be very convenient in the future where docking becomes more advanced, and you'll be able to dock with other ships and stations, allowing you to fill up on everything that you need before heading out and helping some poor souls stuck out in the depths of space. Flanking the port and starboard side of the flight deck, we have a symmetric selection of main battery weapons for the pilot to use, which are gimbaled size 4 weapons. By default, you get a pair of M6A laser cannons on either side, but as you can see, I've upgraded mine to the CF447 Rhino laser repeaters on both sides. More on this in a little bit. The landing gear on this vessel are also symmetrical, and they consist of these long shoes that protrude out of the bottom end of the vessel. There's 2 in the front, and also 2 in the back to help support the weight of the external fuel tanks. Taking a look at the aft end of the ship, we can see said fuel tanks in a 4x2 configuration, 4 on the port and 4 on the starboard side of the ship, which flank the main cargo bay and cargo bay door or ramp. And above me, you'll see that you have the gigantic boom arm to facilitate refueling all those lost souls in deep space. And right above that is your main catwalk, which also allows you access to some of the terminals that can allow for individual fuel control from each given tank. That's pretty much for the external tour. It's a very symmetrical ship, and that's something that I can really enjoy about this particular vessel. Everything is the same on one side as it is on the other, and that makes things pretty straightforward and easy. So let's go ahead and wrap up the external tour and have a look at the interior, where things get much more interesting, followed by a discussion about how to improve this beast out of the factory. Boarding the MISC Starfarer, or MISC Starfarer Gemini in this case, for the very first time, it wouldn't be unreasonable to feel completely overwhelmed and bewildered by the sheer amount of space and volume of space available on this ship. And I wouldn't blame you if you thought, boarding it for the very first time, that this was some kind of transport or otherwise logistical vehicle. In a way, it does provide logistical support by being able to refine, transport, and deliver fuel to those in need. But you've got plenty of space in here for cargo, commodities, vehicles, and even people, which is great. You can use this for all sorts of different applications, although you should know that it is a very slow and unwieldy ship. But beyond that, it provides a lot of utility and customizability to the logistics sector and potentially to your organization. There's lots of space here for people as well, so if that's all you want to transport from point A to point B, let's say maybe you're moving out to a new outpost, this would be a great vehicle to do it with. Moving towards the front end of the ship, we're walking down this little hallway. You'll notice a door that you can open manually, and this leads us to the aforementioned airlock. Unfortunately, there is not a whole lot going on here, and this is not particularly useful other than making a hasty retreat out of the ship without having to open the rear door. But that being said, I'm sure that it's going to become a lot more useful down the road when docking with other ships or stations becomes more of a mainstay. There's a number of confusing ladders, elevators, and staircases that can take you to the upper decks of the ship, and on the starboard side we have the first of these right alongside the cargo bay here, taking us up to deck number 1. We have a few options here. We can go through this door, which will give us access to a nice view over top of the actual cargo bay, as well as access to the maintenance ladder found here, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Another room here, which leads to the escape pods and subsequently the flight deck. Another door on the other side of this catwalk, which leads up to the staircase leading up to the next deck. And finally, an airlocked room, which leads to a walkway right alongside all of your fuel pods, and it includes fuel control panels for each individual pod. This door opens up manually, as does the door on the other side, and the main door here leading out to the aft catwalk. This means that you don't really have to worry about these doors opening or closing on you randomly, which makes for a nice reliable airlock, and leads you out to the aft catwalk here, where you have granular control over the number of tanks that you want to use to dispense your fuel. You do also have on the starboard, as well as on the port side of the ship, a pair of elevators, which will take you up to the next level above this one. Moving further back, we notice that we have a number of controllers, one for each of the 8 fuel tanks on board, and here we can see that we have 10% hydrogen fuel available in this particular tank. I only have one of these filled up for testing purposes, but if you had a number of different fuels in here, or if you had the same fuel in all of them and you just happen to have a larger ship as a customer, you might want to use all of the fuel tanks to make the fuel flow operation a little bit faster and get that person on their way sooner. That being said, though, it is definitely nice to have the granularity of being able to control how much fuel you're dispensing and from which tank, although this is really purely for redundancy purposes, at least in my opinion, because you have all of these controls available to you on the flight deck. It is really nice to be able to get out here, though, and have a look at everything and take a look at your controllers as well as the fuel tanks and the person trying to hopefully not catastrophically pair to your ship in order to be able to receive fuel. You of course have a nice view of the fuel arm or the boom arm itself, and you should be able to use some rudimentary hand signals to communicate with the pilot in the ship that's docked to yours. That being said, this is a really nice addition. Nice to finally see the boom arm in place, and nice to finally see this old giant be useful again. Moving further into the ship, we have a nice internal catwalk that gives us some good views over the cargo bay. This is great for supervising any loading or unloading operations and making sure everything is snugly tied down for the journey ahead, while also ensuring that vehicles and other loose objects don't tend to shift around during flight, which can sometimes cause issues. One of my least favorite things on the ship has got to be this magnetic ladder over here, and I'll show you what I mean. Exactly. I hate this thing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this. Even trying to show it off, it mocks me with this magnetism. I honestly don't think that this should be here. I have no reason to believe that this is very useful at all, especially since what's located on the floor above me is not particularly useful right now. And given that this is a very high traffic area, I don't understand the need to have this ladder right here. Now, a fix to this might be perhaps to add a button here for retracting and lowering the ladder when it's needed, or maybe just even a hatch so that it's completely out of view. This is a place that a lot more people than just the maintenance crew are going to see, and I think it's kind of unsightly and totally not necessary. What's more is that if we go very carefully around this corner and through this door, you'll notice that you have another corridor down this way, which takes you up to the next level anyway. It's literally 30 seconds of walking, if that. I just honestly don't think that this ladder should be included, and if it's going to stay, then we need a way to get rid of it, at least temporarily. And moving yet further into the ship, we have a nice little area here for the Loadmaster to supervise all of the loading and unloading that happens on the ship, with their own control panel, which unfortunately at the moment is in-up, but I'm sure at some point in the future this could control things like perhaps opening and closing the door at the very least, or maybe even operating the airlock in the back. That'd be kind of interesting. Well, we have a door here that of course leads to the next room that we're going to be taking a look at, which is the escape pod room. And again, these are inoperative at the moment, but they hopefully will be very, very soon. TM, of course. Now, this next door will lead us into the flight deck, and my, oh my, ladies and gentlemen, what a flight deck it is. The flight deck of the Starfarer, and of course of the Starfarer Gemini, is probably one of my favorites of all time in Star Citizen. I don't know, it's just the way that it's designed. It's got a very, very large and generously sized viewport, although a little thin vertically, very wide horizontally, which gives lots of nice viewing angles. We do have a seat for the pilot and co-pilot with a number of MFDs as well as their own individual radars. The captain's seat, but of course with its own individual lighting and some touchscreens and controls on the sides of the chair. And then, of course, towards the rear of this cabin here, we have the auxiliary engineers panel, as well as, of course, the refueling panel, which we're going to have a look at in much more detail in next week's video when we talk about how to actually use this thing for refueling. So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next floor as we explore this very vast interior of the Starfarer Gemini. The third deck of the Starfarer and the Starfarer Gemini consists predominantly of access to maintenance areas as well as the refinery and the first two of the three defense turrets on the vessel. We're currently on the port side of the ship and we have access to a lift here which has a mind of its own for some reason, and that will take us up to the next level, which is the habitation deck. We do of course also have an emergency ladder here that we can use just in case the elevators don't want to play along. I can understand that for new people especially, this is going to be very difficult to find your way around, but you should take some solace in knowing that everything on the ship, or pretty much everything, is symmetrical, including the sentient elevators, so it'll make things a little easier to know that what you see on one side of the ship is probably going to be on the other. Walking through the side door here, this is on the starboard side of deck 3. We have access to a maintenance area on the starboard side of the ship, and we have a number of ladders here as well. We have one that will take you back down to the second level and another that will take you up to the fourth level, the habitation deck, which we'll check out in just a little bit. You got a little crawl space here, which you'll actually need to crawl through to get to, or you can simply head out this door and go through this one, and then you'll be able to access it through the left-hand side here. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to go ahead and explore that on your own. There's not too many interesting things there, but it's definitely nice to have, and it adds a little bit of life to the ship. Moving further into the midsection of the ship, we can see that we have a little vestibule here for the refining area, and we have a pair of escape pods because, of course, anything can happen. We do have the refinery right in the middle of the ship here with a number of medical kits for safety and some terminals, it looks like. And we do have the main refinery unit here, again with a panel that seems to be inoperative. Moving further out and behind the main refinery unit, we do have something else that looks like it's part of the refinery, but it's so dark, mysterious, and ominous looking that I honestly don't want to touch it. If you know what this is specifically, do let me know in the comments though. A nice little room here in the back as well with access to a few doors. Presumably these could be maybe suit lockers, since we do have a pair of those aforementioned elevators here on both the port and the starboard side, which lead us down to that exterior catwalk beside all the fuel tanks, which actually makes a whole lot of sense. We move further down here, we'll have another door that allows us to exit the refinery, and then on this port side of the ship here, we can see that we have another pair of escape pods, which again, unfortunately, are not operating at the moment. And moving further towards the front of the ship here, again, on the port side, we see that we have some more access to a maintenance area, although this one is not as big as the one on the starboard side. Moving even further towards the front of the ship here, we can see that this is the stairwell that we actually came from, and this will give you access back down to the second level of the ship. Finally, moving through the doors ahead of the refinery, we can see that we have an incredibly long walkway, and this is going to be basically one of the two turrets on the rear of the ship. We do have some windows here as well, so you can get a pretty good look at the engines of the vessel as well as all the fuel tanks, and you'll probably also be able to see a little bit of who's docked to the ship, if anything at all. We do have this nice comfortable seat here, and honestly, these are some of the nicest turrets I've seen in pretty much any ship ever. They're really well lit and they're really well designed, although they go upside down, so it can be a little bit nausea-inducing if you're not used to that, and they do definitely take a little bit of time to get accustomed to. Now, as I mentioned, the majority of this ship is pretty much symmetrical, so if we go back through the refinery and have a look at the other side, you'll notice that we have the same ominous long-looking hallway leading to the same turret just on the opposite end on the starboard side of the ship. And I should mention that both of those have a pair of size 3 guns, which again, shouldn't really have a problem in discouraging anybody from attacking the ship while you're doing your business. Let's go ahead and take the elevators in the back of this compartment here up to the next level, and we'll take a look at habitation before we talk about how we can upgrade this ship together. The habitation deck of any ship in the verse should be inviting, relaxing, and full of atmosphere, or at least easy to look at, and none of those things are things that I can say about the one in the Gemini. Now, I'm a huge fan of Aegis Dynamics, which is one of the biggest names in military in the verse, but when the only color-clad area of your habitation deck is the gigantic size 5 turret seat, that kind of speaks volumes. There's a couple of elevators here that take you to the 3rd floor of the ship. This one here that we came from, and this one here. This will get you to the port side and the other to the starboard side respectively. And we have a nice ominous looking red and orange glow from the central size 5 turret boasting a pair of size 5 guns. Moving towards the starboard side of the ship here, you see that we have a very nondescript door taking us to a maintenance room. There's not a whole lot going on here. It's fairly well lit. There's a few panels on the wall, some blinky thingies. And of course, we have a ladder that is going to be taking us down to level 3, and then another ladder from there taking us down to level 2, giving us access to all of the maintenance panels and maintenance areas on the 3rd and 2nd floor, respectively. Moving right along to the crew mess, the main attraction, if you will, of the habitation deck. And you can see that it's fairly bare bones here as well, but it's got all the required amenities, with, of course, the exception of the main table. Now, I'm not sure what happened here, whether they took it out and just forgot to put it back in, or whether it's built into the floor. But if you happen to know, do let me know in the comments down below, and let's talk about it, because definitely pretty interesting that the Starfarer has one, but the Gemini does not. There's a nice little kitchenette here as well, with what looks to be a covered sink, which kind of totally makes sense when you're on a spaceship, as well as a number of different smaller appliances and some screens dotting the area. Now, there is, of course, a captain's quarters in here as well, but it's very interesting that it's built into the actual mess hall instead of being its own room. Walking through here, we can see that there's plenty of space with a large desk, a number of different panels, which are in-op, unfortunately, and it's missing a chair. Seems to be a bit of a pattern in this particular ship. Now, one of my favorite things about this is the bedspread here, because honestly, folks, it does not get better than this. I want to buy one of these IRL, CIG, make it happen. Moving right along, we have a window here, which could definitely use with a little bit of privacy, but it's small enough, and I figure in the depths of space, who's going to be EVAing out to catch you taking a nap? Over here, we have a nice big wide opening leading up to the washroom. Again, decently lit, but everything looks very sterile and boring. Double tap sink, and we've got some stuff on the wall, as well as a typical shoilet combo with a little bit more space for the commander to stretch his legs and get everything clean. Last but not least, folks, let's go ahead and have a look at the crew rest area of the Gemini here on the habitation deck, because honestly, it's one of my favorite places of the entire ship. It's a lot more inviting, and the atmosphere is a lot more calm and relaxed here than in other places. And yeah, I do understand it's made by Aegis Dynamics and MISC, and so for that reason, it's probably going to be very industrial and very function over form. However, I really do like this place. There's some really nice ambient lights in here. It's nice and dark and a good place to relax. Enough space for everybody to stretch out, and some cubbies to put your personal belongings. There's even an independent light for each of the beds, as well as a nice little window to look out of just in case you happen to be passing some pretty planets. There is also a locker room back here, which has a couple of benches and a couple of doors that don't work, unfortunately, for the washrooms. And interestingly enough, 4 out of the 6 crewmates here are going to be getting lockers, and the other 2, well, I guess they'll just have to share. But given how old this ship is, I honestly really wish that CIG took some time out of its very busy schedule and gave this thing a facelift, both graphically and functionally. Definitely be a nice thing to see. All right, everybody, so let's go ahead and talk about how to upgrade this thing. We're going to go ahead and start with weapons and then move throughout all of the different components. Now, unfortunately, on the Urkel.games website, please let me know if you're having the same issue, but we're not able to change any of these out. They seem to be locked, and there doesn't seem to be a way to unlock them. So it could just be the website, but let me know if you experience the same issue. Nevertheless, I'm just going to preface this video in the way that I do most times, which is just to say that these are my own recommendations based on my playstyle. Yours might be different, and that's totally okay. So let's go ahead and get started with the weapons, and for these, I would prefer to change these out to the CF447 Rhino laser repeaters. If you're able to upgrade these things to size 5s, then that's where the Omni Sky laser cannons would be good. But in my opinion, laser cannons don't really scale that well in the current version of the game at a size 4 and below. So you get more DPS and burst DPS with the smaller repeaters as opposed to the same size cannons. So we're going to go ahead and go with the CF447, even though we can't change them there. That's what I'll go with, and I'll make sure to put that in the description below as well. The funny thing is, we also have 7 different fuel tanks here. It looks like they're fuel tanks anyway, instead of 8. So that is an important distinction to make. There should be 8 of them there. And we're going to go ahead and move right along to the turrets. Now, the turrets are interesting. There are 6 different turrets or turret guns, I should say, on the Starfarer Gemini, and they're divided into pairs of turrets, pairs of guns on 3 separate turrets. So you have the big one there with the 2 size 5 weapons that comes with the Galderines out of the factory, so pretty good. And then you also have the manned left and manned right turrets as well, which are the ones at the port and starboard side and the aft end of the ship that help to protect any of these ships that may be docked there for fuel. And those come with CF337s respectively. So that's pretty good. I'll leave the Panthers there because the Panthers are really good. But like I said, the laser cannons really do start to show their force at size 5 and above. So we're going to go ahead and choose the Omni Skies for this using the little search feature here, which is really nice on the Urkel.games website. So there you go, the Omni Sky 15s there on the main turret. That's going to be the one off the habitation deck, if you remember. And then these are going to be left the way they are because those are just fine. Now for the big menacing missile rack at the front of the ship, we have a selection of arrestor missiles that comes stock, and the arrestors are not bad, but again, unfortunately, they don't perform really well, especially when your targets are a little bit smaller and they're closer to other objects, or even on larger objects or larger ships that are closer to other ships or other objects. The arrestors don't seem to work very well, and I'm not sure whether that is something that's intended or not, but I would change these to Thunderbolt, and again, I'm clicking on this and it's not letting me change it, so maybe a bug with the website. But go with the Thunderbolts. They are EM. They lock really quickly for the size of missiles that they are. They have a good range, about let's say about 12 to 14 kilometers. I probably wouldn't launch them anything more than 10 kilometers though away, and they do really, really well. They also have a bit of a splash damage effect as well, which is great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the components, and we've got the Stronghold here. All of these are going to be size 3. And honestly, the Parapet or the FR series are pretty good. I like the FR a little bit more, but whichever one of these you have is going to be absolutely fine. So let's go ahead with the FR, and then we'll move on to the power plant. Now, the power plant, the super drive, again, not too bad, but we have a few options here. The Durango is really good because it's an A-class, but it's also industrial, and these tend to be the most expensive. So it depends on whether you have the money or not. If you don't, the JS500 is nice, and the Quadracell is nice as well. And they both put out about the same amount of power. So we'll go with the JS. As you guys know, that's probably a favorite of mine. But it depends on how much money you have and how much you want to spend. Maybe even as far as how far you want to go to pick one up. I'm going to go with the JS myself, though, and move on to the coolers. So for the coolers, we've got Mercury's stock again. These are size 3s. And the Chillmax are probably the best. Again, they are industrial grade A. I don't really have the money to buy those right now, so I'm going to go with something still pretty good, but not as amazing as that. So we're going to go with the Blizzards here for both of them, and those will do just fine with the 11.6K of cooling per second, or 11,600K rather per second, and those will do you just fine. Now for the Quantum Drive, this is going to be pretty easy. There's only really one that I would recommend here, and that would be the TS2, if we can find that. There it is. The TS2 is going to be probably the best one that you want in a size 3. There are others, and you can certainly use this to search for the speed as well as the acceleration and find one that works for you. In my opinion, the TS2 is the best. I have it on my Carrack, I have it on my Starfarer, and anything else that takes a size 3, I use the TS2, and I am very happy with it. It's very fast. It's not too bad on fuel, and it lasts a very long time, especially with the fuel tanks on the Carrack and the Gemini. They're pretty big, so this one will last you quite a while. Other than that, of course, we have our liveries here. This is, of course, going to be 100% your choice. I was using the black livery for the video, and if you like that one, that's the one that I was using. But other than that, this pretty much wraps up the upgrade process. Fairly simple. Again, I'll try to make sure that I put everything in the description below so that you guys can see it, the things that we weren't able to change here. And in fact, maybe I'll just write it out instead of putting the links, because it's kind of it defeats the purpose of posting the links if we can't change these. So I'll just post the whole loadout down below, and like I said, if you guys have your own, feel free to share it with me down below, or feel free to come by, join our Discord. The link is in the description, and you can post your own loadouts in the loadout channel there. Well, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you so very much for watching this week's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and make sure that you go and check out the link in the description as well with respect to the 8K sub giveaway. We're giving away a LTI hover quad, so make sure to follow the link in the description and go ahead and enter. It's completely free to enter. You just got to follow a few steps, and you can get yourself in on that before the 21st of May, which is when we're going to choose the winner. So best of luck, and thank you guys so much for your support. If you enjoyed the video, of course, make sure to leave me a like and become a subscriber. Turn on notifications, and that way you don't miss anything in the future. And if you'd like to go above and beyond, like Rusty Hook did, please make sure to become a patron. The link is in the description below. We have some awesome perks and benefits available for you there. Or alternatively, you can become a channel member here on YouTube by clicking on the blue join button right below the video. And that will also help a huge bunch to keep things going here, and I very much appreciate your direct support. It really goes a long way to helping me out. Of course, you can also share the video with your friends and your communities, and make sure to join me on stream. I stream Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. Would love to see you there, as well as, like I said, our wonderful Discord community. So I hope to see you there, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, in the next video.